and welcome to this UniCourse video. My name is Ashley and the topic of today's session is an introduction to change management. Now, the main aim of today's session is just to briefly talk you through an introduction to change, the reasons for change, the benefits for change, why an organisation has to change, and how to manage the people through change as well. So let's get started. Now, there are a number of units within the ILM programme at level 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 that have change management as part of the criteria within the specific units. And, it's useful to understand change and, why it has to happen. But let's start by just providing a definition. So I've noted down here that organisations can undergo changes in a specific division, such as marketing department, or as a whole, as well as a whole restructure, for example. But the definition from the Oxford Dictionary is the process of causing a function, practice, or thing to become somehow different compared to what it was in the past. In order to be a successful change leader, it requires a broad range of skills. It provides you to be able to address practical organisational issues, while probably one of the main and the key elements of it is the human element. So being able to manage and support people through change as well. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail now. So firstly, let's start by talking about why organisations need to change. What are the reasons for change? Now, we've talked about in past class recordings about the external influences and the internal influences on an organisation and how them factors can impact on the direction of the organisation. So some organisations might need to change because they want to. Every 3 to 5 years, they decide to review their strategy, to create a new vision, or to review the vision of the organisation and to consider what their goals are going to be. Now, obviously, if they change the goals, they might want to change the goals, but then there might be a need to actually change the processes, the operations, the people, in order to be able to facilitate that, strategy. They also might be made to change by external influences. If we look back a past session that we've done on when we did a pestle analysis and focused on how to conduct that, political, economical, social, legal and environmental factors that influence an organisation might mean that the organisation needs to change. And more often than not, if they're made to change, it can be painful and it can sometimes be harmful on the organisation as well, because they might not have the resources to be able to effectively implement that change and make sure that change sticks. Now, if they want to change, and they know that they've got the resources and they've got, the right people and the right skills and the time and to put together a plan and to implement that change effectively and evaluate that change to make sure it sticks and is effective, then they might find that easy. But, there's then 3 directions that you've got to focus on, but change is inevitable in any organisation in order for an organisation to grow, to keep up to date with the competitors, in order for them to be able to work efficiently and effectively, especially in today's world where, technology is changing so quickly. There may be a need to change to stay in line and competitive within your market. So we've thought about, okay, why do we need to change? But what are the drivers for change? Now, I've focused this on the 2 different areas, the internal and the external influences and factors that can influence that change. But, the internal might focus on areas such as organisational growth. And if the organisation is growing, then the human resources, and the people within the organisation obviously need to grow as well. And that's the same about, succession planning and thinking about management as well. If your organisation grows and you've got 10 more members of staff, then somebody needs to be able to manage them staff. Also, processes might need to change. organisational structure might need to change. You know, an organisation that grows 20, 50 times within 3 years, you know, might have a flat organisational structure, and that might not work the larger the organisation goes. So it's important to be able to consider that organisational structure when you're thinking about organisational growth as well. And as we mentioned before, strategy. If your mission, vision, goals are changing, then obviously the operations within the organisation need to change to be able to reach them goals and achieve that vision and that mission as well. Key performance indicators might change, and that might be because, you know, you've researched the market and you've found that, you know, another organisation is doing 15 sales a month and your key performance indicators linked to 12 a month, and you're thinking, well, I need to stay competitive within the market, so maybe our key performance indicators will heighten because of that. It might be that you've got a really good learning and development program and training program within your organisation. So if that's the case, the key performance indicators might grow as the people grow, or they might change as the people change and develop within the organisation as well. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, technology, continuous improvement within an organisation, they're key things to growth and and key indicators for change as well. When you're looking at external, okay, you can look at, you know, things like, you know, the external factors that impact, such as the pests that, as I mentioned earlier on. But, you know, the needs and the wants and expectation to the customers is really important. Let's think of an example here. If you decided for continuous improvement, you know, an internal driver for change, if you were thinking, I want to, you know, reduce the number of complaints within the organisation, or, you know, I want to find a little bit more about what the customers want from us and what they need and what they expect from us in order to be able to provide the best service for the customers. Then, you know, you might send out a customer satisfaction survey, for example, and then you could get the feedback from that, and from that feedback, you know, you might have an indicator for a different internal operational change or a process change as well. Then, you know, things like suppliers, you know, this is more relevant today than an exchange rate and globalization, to be honest. But it's more relevant today, especially since Brexit. You know, a lot of people have tried to change their suppliers to make it a little bit easier for their organisational supply chain. They have also maybe decided to change the suppliers to being a little bit more environmentally friendly as well. Social changes, you know, if you were a small grocery shop and you had a Sainsbury's or an Aldi open round the corner, you might need to instigate a lot of changes in your organisation to be able to, you know, consider how you can adapt to that change effectively. So this isn't exclusive. You may find that there's more. These are just some fitting examples. Okay, so how is change planned and identified? Now, we've talked about the SWOT analysis, you know, and the external factors that influence an organisation, and, you know, could be the instigation for a change. But, you know, that might only be done every year, or, you know, every time you're reviewing your strategy. The SWOT analysis looks at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats, and looks not only at the internal factors but the external factors that might provide you with some opportunities for development of the organisation, or weaknesses that you might be able to develop on, or threats that you might need to have a plan B for or a backup plan for. And then the COSMIC focuses on the you know, the industry, the suppliers, the market, the competitors, and more importantly, you know, the customers, and it's got their focus. So these are just some sort of some analytical tools that you can use if you think that you might find that there is a need for change. So why change? Why should we change? You know, I've known organisations, you know, such as, you know, sole traders that have kept their organisation the same for 30 years and they've said, well, it's not broken, so why should we fix it? And that's absolutely fine. But if you want to lead your company to the future, if you want to, motivate and inspire your employees, you'll be continually wanting to change to show growth, and looking at maybe opening new markets could be a really big benefit for you. Like you might only market through a newspaper, for example, and today, there's tracker trades, there's there's Facebook, there's social media, there's a number of different ways that you can reach a wider market now. So although you might have been operating from that time and that advertisement was absolutely fine, consider, where you could be in the future and the benefits of that change if you did go about doing that. Then improving efficiency, improving efficiency and effectiveness within an organisation might make your life easier. It might be something as much as going on a developmental course to be able to manage your time more effectively so you can delegate things out and be able to free up more time so your work-life balance is better, which in turn might help yourself or your mental health or that of the employees. And then creating new opportunities to grow. So it'll help with decision making. It might open new doors, new opportunities, new options, and that might in turn help you to reduce costs, create investor confidence. There's a number of different benefits for an organisation of change, and growth is probably one of the biggest ones. But there's a number of different ones. And having a happy workforce, I think, is probably one of the biggest benefits of change. So, you might decide that extending the office might be quite expensive. But the benefits of it might be that people might have more space, they might feel happier within the workspace, more room to move around, less on top of each other's back, and it might create more of a positive working culture, which in turn might make the organisation and the team work more effectively and efficiently and create more of a positive atmosphere. And the personal benefits of change, and I think it's important to understand the personal benefits of change as well, whether you're a manager, a leader, a director, or whether you're one of the people on the floor. I think it's important to be able to communicate the benefits of change to everybody and think about it from a personal perspective. If you're doing the same job every single day and not being challenged one bit, a lot of people get bored of that job and then maybe might not do it as effectively, or it might just become like second nature and they might really feel bored with the job. So creating a greater job satisfaction by challenging them, by changing things up a little bit, can often motivate people, can often excite them, and people might find it rewarding, especially if it's going to make the organisation more profitable. Maybe the people might profit that are involved, at the forefront of that change. And personal and professional development to help people to be the best that they can be by challenging them with new actions can often be really good as well. So we've talked a little bit about reasons and drivers and and benefits of change, and that's all that's all operational, that's all there. But let's think about now what the actual process of change is. Now, I've worked in a number of organisations when I was an assessor and found that the people that don't really understand the process of change and just implement change without anything else happening are usually the ones that have an unhappy workforce, are usually ones that the change doesn't stick, that communication just falls flat, and it's important to have a process for change. And not every organisation will have the same process, but this is an example of a change management workflow process that that I've had in a past workplace. And the first point of this was creating a change request. So some might call this a proposal or even a project proposal, but depending on where that change is implemented, whether it's at the structural or an organisational or a functional level, or a departmental level, or even a personal level, creating a change request, I think, is quite important. It's important to be able to have a bit of a background and a bit of an idea as to what's the reason for change. What are we doing this for? And then, reviewing the change request with either your manager or, your team, and assessing the risks of that change. So there's always a risk of doing absolutely nothing, especially when there's an issue or a problem or something. But sometimes the risks outweigh the benefits. So maybe doing a bit of a risk assessment and thinking, okay, do the benefits outweigh maybe the cost of implementing the change, or do you think it's best to just do nothing while we've got maybe a busy period and then think about approving the change at a later date? Now, once you've got an approval for that change, it's really, really, really important to set about doing either a change management plan, an implementation plan, in order for everybody to know what's going on with that change and how the change is going to implement them. And most of the time, people just understanding why that change is happening will get their buy-in. There's a number of leading thinkers whose analysis and modelling of change management processes are considered best practice. You've got Kurt Lewin, you've got John Cotter, you've got Peter Drucker, you've got there are a lot of management theorists that specialise in change management, and we'll talk a little bit more about change management theories in a minute. But almost all of them suggest that having some sort of change management process will strengthen the structure of managing through change. And remembering that every organisation has a different, some people don't even call it change. Some people might just say that, it could be just, here's another project, let's go ahead and do it. Here's another project, let's go ahead and do that. And they might have a project proposal and a project plan and a project implementation plan. But bearing in mind that basically anything that's not the same, going back to that definition, is a change. So it might not even necessarily mean that it might just be a departmental change. That's not necessarily a project. But it is a change happening, like the implementation of a new staff member, for example. So let's talk about the types of change, and the triggers for change could be categorised in these different ways. Now, you've got maybe structural, or cultural cost, or process change. So process change could be as simple as you've been informed that, or say you've done a personal analysis and you found out that there's going to be big changes to data protection laws. So you now need to think about, okay, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to have to do in relation to change? We're going to have to think about the process in relation to data collection and how we hold our customers' information. We might need to think about the cost of going on courses. We might need to think of the structure of the organisation. We might need to have someone who's in charge of training of that. So there's different ways, but there could be structural changes in relation to the organisational structure as well. There could be changes in relation to the annual finances for, say, marketing, or there could be a number of changes in relation to that section. Breakthrough changes or business process re-engineering is a lot bigger, and breakthrough changes can be found through analysis, close analysis of an organisation. It could even be that, you know, you've found out from surveys that customers want this or they want that, and you've decided that you're going to change something, a new process to be able to accommodate for that. It might even be that the breakthrough of a new technology allows you to make a big change within the organisation to re-engineer and restructure a whole department, for example. And they're more radical changes, you know, radical changes that are going to have a huge impact on the people within the organisation. But then you can also think of incremental changes and, you know, continuous improvement. So small, minute changes that can, maybe not minute changes, but small changes that can have a big, you know, a big impact on a person or a department, or and that could be, you know, if you think about the Kaizen model of improvement, that could be something as little as, okay, we've decided we're not going to post letters out to our customers no more. Everything is going to go via email, or everything's going to go via an app, and that will help us to change this, that, and the other. But it could be small little incremental changes first, and then they could lead to bigger changes, and they could lead to more structural and process changes as well. So talking about them different types of changes, you can sort of think about it in levels. You can think about it more of a strategic level where the whole of the organisation will be, you know, impacted by it. You could think about, and that's often called strategic drift. You could think about it more on a functional level. So it could be operations, supply chain, you know, things like that might be changing. Could even be the performance management structure is changing. Or, you know, it could be more on a departmental level as well, where it could just be, you know, tasks and objectives and the way that you conduct yourself maybe within that department has changed. You know, there's been quite a lot of changes in relation to functional lately, because a lot of people are hybrid working now, and, you know, that has really impacted on organisations, and some might even say it on a strategic level, but it focuses mostly on the functional element of the organisation. But yeah, if you think about it on the different levels, think about the people that are impacted by that change, and then think about, you know, to successfully lead through change, you've got to think about the essential skills that a manager must need, you know, or that they should really have. And that's thinking about, you know, the vision of the organisation and being able to portray that to the team, or to, you know, the whole organisation if needs be. And then, you know, the communication skills and the interpersonal skills that are necessary to be able to inform people of the big picture. You know, some people might not understand that moving the desk to another area is going to benefit the organisation until they understand that maybe in the future, you know, they're going to start having customers come into the office and they're going to create a reception area there. So you might be a departmental change, but that's part of a more of a strategic change that's going to be happening in the future. And I think when you understand where you fit into that, or the reasons and the why change is actually happening, a lot of people are more happy to, you know, go along with it. So before we go into the actual theories and models themselves, I just thought it would have been nice to just point out the brief terminology. So change management models, you know, there's many of them. You know, I've just mentioned, you know, Drucker, Clotter, you know, Lewin. There's a number of really, really great theorists, and they've created models based on research and experience and how best to manage change within an organisation. And most of them provides some sort of process or framework to be able to follow or apply, to follow through with that change. Change management plans are usually there to support the change, to drive the change or project, and it's typically created in the planning stage or in the proposal stage, or right at the start when the change is being the need for change is being identified. And then the change management processes include a sequence of steps, activities that allow the change to be successful, really. So now let's have a focus on some of the most popular change management models. So Herr Lewin, one of the greatest management theorists in my eyes, was one of the first management theories to come up with the concept of the unfreeze, change, and freeze concept and process, really, and it's more about being able to completely take apart what's going to happen, and that's what's meant by the the unfreeze. So completely undo what's happening at the moment. Maybe in relation to culture, maybe in relation to process, and maybe just like taking it all into parts so you can see exactly how it's working at the moment, and then implementing the change. But then he points out how important it is to actually, refreeze, to freeze that back up, to basically make sure that it's a process that's going to stick. And then you've got Drucker, who argues that in a world where change is constant and inevitable, organisations must be change leaders and must have the skills needed and the people needed to be able to identify when change is needed, identify, the need for growth, identify where, issues and problems might make room for change. And it's important to point out these 4 bullet points as well. So policies to make the future. So there's no point in implementing a change and not making it so it's day to day. So it's, if people are just doing it from here to there and it's not really being set in stone, then it's completely pointless. It is important to be able to set that change into action, but to evaluate the change to make sure it's consistently still happening. And then systematic methods to look for and to anticipate change as well. So thinking about all the analytical tools that you can use to be able to look for the need for change, anticipate when change needs to happen, and then also considering the correct way to introduce that change to the people that are going to be affected, but also to the people outside of the organisation, such as the customers, for example. If you're getting a completely new software system, you need to be able to inform the customers that maybe the systems might be down for a couple of hours, but you can do this, that, and the other. And then policies to balance change and continuity. So then policies for the future, and then bringing it back to the policies to make sure that sticks, basically. So let's have a little look at Cotter's change model. So Cotter introduced his 8-step model, which I've pointed out here on this diagram, and he developed it and wrote about it in his 1996 book, Leading Change, which is an absolutely brilliant book, to be honest. If you do get a chance to read it, have a read. It outlines steps organisations can take to increase their likelihood of successful transformational change. And the first step, it aims to define the organisation's existing culture, but it also creates a sense of urgency and a need for that change. So you're thinking about, why do we need to change? Is there an issue? Is there a problem? Is there been an analysis that has proven that we do need to change to keep up with the times? What is that sense of urgency? So thinking about that, and this is the defreeze, and this is all part of the defreezing section. So, disseminate, the current situation and the current climate. And then secondly, by assembling a powerful group of people to lead the change process, thinking by developing a desirable vision, some key goals and objectives, and being able to communicate that vision effectively. It's extremely, extremely, extremely important to be able to communicate that vision. And because if you don't, then why are people change? Why are people needing to change? What's the point? People need to know what the point of change is. Steps 5, 6, 7 help to make the change a reality by removing obstacles to the vision, creating short-term wins, and consolidating successes as well. The final step then rephrases the organisation's new culture by anchoring positive behaviours, cultures, and, just basically making sure that everyone understands what's going to happen. So Trainer developed some skills for change management, and he said that, managing conflict, which to be honest isn't necessarily skill, while managing change in my experience, because some people are resistant to it. Some people are just happy as they are and don't want to change. But it's important to recognise that some people don't like change, and that could be based around their personality, that could be based around their mental health, that could be based around the way that they've worked for so long. They might never have changed before within the workplace. So it's important to be able to have good interpersonal skills, to be able to, and then maybe have empathy with people and say, I understand that you don't want to change this, but this is the reason why. Always emphasising that vision. Having good leadership skills as well, knowing when to adapt, your leadership style to different situations, I think is really important, and being flexible with the staff as well, letting them know that, okay, if you're struggling, okay, maybe I might not be working, but if you text me and let me know, I'll make sure I can work out a way to help you through it. And that comes back to time management, performance management, and project management skills as well. Obviously, once you've got an implementation plan there, and if you've got good project management skills, that implementation plan should be quite good. It's managing the processes and the people through that change that's, extremely important. So I know that this is quite wordy, this screen, but I really think this is an amazing diagram, and it looks at the ACT-R model for change. The ACT-R model was developed like about 2 decades ago by Jeff Hyatt, and I just think it's a really good model to be able to follow, as it focuses on awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And at its core, it's about understanding that organisational change can only happen when individuals change. It's like the 5 building blocks. So you've got the awareness, where you announce the change to employees well ahead of time to make them aware, to prepare them and get them ready. And then you're explaining why that needs to happen, but also giving employees opportunities to ask questions. And that's the awareness section. And, that's not like awareness to the change. It's awareness to the why change is happening. So it's not awareness to this is when that change is going to happen. It's awareness to, well, this is why the change is going to happen. So they're bought into the reasons why that change needs to happen. And then the desire is about understanding and being able to feel what the employees' reactions are going to be to change, to be able to preempt them and be able to deal with them before the change actually happens. And you can identify change champions there. So if someone's really bought into that change, you can say, okay, will you help me as part of the change management team, maybe, to work through the whole process. And some people might like that because it gives them a little bit of an opportunity for development and be able to be part of the project more. And then, knowledge focuses on making sure that people are ready for change by making sure that they've got the right training and support, and if there's any gaps in knowledge for the change that's being implemented, try and fill that before it's being implemented. Maybe, there's no point in implementing a new software system and then having the training a week after, because people are going to have a week of really struggling. So it's important to be able to make sure that the correct resources are there in order for them to be ready for that change. And then the ability focuses on, monitoring performance immediately following the change to provide constructive feedback and more training if necessary, adjust processes as necessary. There's always going to be teething problems within, especially big changes. So prepare for them, maybe have plan Bs as well. And then the reinforcement is about monitoring the change over time, making sure that you're reviewing and evaluating what's happening with that change. Some objectives might need to change. Some, time frames might need to change, or, following on from some teething problems. But use positive feedback, use recognition, allow people to give each other a tap on the back when change is being successful and when it's being implemented well. And that'll just get that buy-in from all of the staff as well. So the ACT-R model, I think, is probably a really, really useful one if you're the person that's involved in managing that change. And there's always going to be barriers. There's always going to be negative people. There's always going to be there's not always going to be lack of communication. Not if you've got a good communication plan. Because sometimes, as well as the implementation plan, you might have a communication plan as well that might be included as part of it. But the lack of communication can be a severe barrier, as I mentioned earlier on. Most changes that are implemented are not implemented effectively or do not stick because of communication issues. So consider who needs to be communicated by when, stakeholder management, looking after different people's interests, and making sure that the door is always open, or people can talk to you if they need to. Lack of leadership as well. People sometimes just get given a completely new focus or a new direction, or can walk into an office one morning and all of the desks can be moved without any sort of warning, and that can cause disruption, and the disruption affects the change being implemented effectively. So probably more barriers than that, but that's just what I'm going to point out today. And I can't say how important this is, but evaluating the change, clarifying, re-evaluating the objectives, because as I said, they can change. Collecting feedback from your staff, saying to them, how do you feel like this change is going? Is there any way that we can do it better? What would you, they might have different ideas that might make it better, and getting that the input from them, and the input from the leadership team as well, and the management team is really, really important, because things change. Assess and pre-assess, pinpoint gaps, gaps in knowledge, gaps in understanding. Also think about how you could do it better if you were going to do it next time. So if your change management process is quite new, Could you do it better the next time? If so, how? Analyse any sort of delays, issues, problems, and think if there's, for example, bottlenecks in, things being authorised, is there a way that maybe you could change that bottleneck of information or communication in order for something to be actioned, for example? And then be sure to debrief the team. It's important to be able to inform your team when they've done well. It's important to be able to inform your team when change has been a success. But it's also important to be able to communicate with the team if something hasn't been a success. We've implemented this change, it hasn't gone well, we've decided to pick another option, we've decided to do this. That's perfectly fine if you're going to do that, but be honest with your team, debrief the team, recognise achievements, recognise pitfalls, recognise issues, problems that could maybe be avoided in the next change, in the next process of change. And, the team will be a little bit happier. And once you've communicated your vision for change across your organisation, you can then define the change strategy. You can assemble a change team, develop a communication strategy or communication plans, and that will then support the whole people that are involved in the change. And then, obviously debriefing them and evaluating whether it's been a success or not. I mean, hopefully any change that's being implemented is good. So yeah, it's important to be able to communicate that with the team. So today we have talked through the reasons for change, drivers of change, why organisations need to change, and we've looked at a brief introduction into managing through change. Now this is quite a big topic, and we might look at revisiting this topic in a little bit more detail, specifically the management of people through change in the future. But for today, that concludes my session. If you do have any questions, you can contact me on the details, but I hope you have got something from this session today. Thank you for watching. Bye.